Hello and welcome to what I believe will be a Patreon edition of the Terrace Scottish Football Podcast. My name's Craig Anderson and I'm joined by my good friend Tony Anderson.
Oh, Craigie Anderson. How are we? How are you?
I'm doing well. I'm doing well. I've got to the end of a long semester at work, finished all the teaching now, and can kick back a bit. Booked to go to Portugal at the end of April, and
Oh, very nice.
nice.
Whereabouts?
So, just to the Algarve, so just down Albufeira. Very much not pre-family, not like nothing wrong with that type of holiday, but not I was always a city break type of person. But when you have a small child in tow, just places where you can sit still and do nothing are much more enjoyable. So yes, looking forward to that.
Absolutely. I went to stag do in Albufeira. Now probably about 6 years ago, possibly. It was I was on the stag do when Hibs drew 5-5 with Rangers.
Excellent, yes.
That happened, and the room was very excited as Hibs went 3-0 up. There were a lot of Hibs fans. There were one Rangers fan, and actually Hibs had to win 6-0, possibly. So a lot of people were very excited for that, and then that all went tits up and just became manic. But I remember we went for dinner. My mate had booked obviously this is about 30 people, and one of the best men or whatever, groomsmen had booked a restaurant, and he went over and it was round the corner, 30 people all set up. So basically, like on the beachfront, it's like one of these things that's on the coast, practically the whole restaurant. And a guy went, "Oh, my friend, your table's ready for you." So we all went in and sat down, and we got served by these guys. They weren't the restaurant. It was the restaurant next door that was sitting completely empty because we were meant to go in there. So but he'd been flummoxed by the other guy, and it was too late.
Excellent. So you're a very elaborate con. A very elaborate one.
Yeah, but made a lot of money. Made a lot of money that night.
I suspect my trip to Albufeira might be slightly different from yours in terms of the itinerary, but it'll be the same fundamentals of sitting, enjoying the sunshine and having a few drinks, so it's not hugely different.
But not going to see DG Luck and MC Neat at the beach, I would
probably not. Probably not. You never know. You never can say for sure. What about you, Tony? How's things with you?
Oh, I'm well, thank you. I'm very much looking forward to Saturday. I don't know when this will go out, but we are going to Stenhousemuir on Saturday for hospitality, which I'm really, really looking forward to. It's good to get. It's so rare to get so many of us all together. So I'm really looking forward to that.
That'll be a good date.
And they dropped the menu today for the meat eaters. So lentil soup, steak pie, profiteroles. You just can't really go wrong. It's a crowd pleasing menu. So I'm really looking forward to it in general.
It'll be a good day. I'll get lentil soup and 2 other things for me. But yeah, that'll be all good. I'm looking forward to it as well. But anyway, the time for chit chat is over. The reason we're on here, and this is something that is usually a kind of part of the main show, or it has been, but I think the feedback was the All League stuff was more popular than us jabronis sitting talking about who could have thought it. So this is the next one on the top 12 list. Is the top 12 fullbacks. So the second one, the goalkeeper list, I think Joel and Craig did. Was that right?
Yeah, Joel and Craig done the goalies, aye.
And this time we're going to talk about fullbacks. So it's you and I, Tony. We've had quite a lengthy debate between ourselves, but between the whole group today about what constitutes a fullback, which players are in the list, which players are not in the list, etc. The main notable exception, I think, is Stephen Kingsley is now being classified as a centre-back for this list, having spent most of the season playing there, albeit in a back three, mostly for Hearts. I think you and I probably both kind of thought he was a fullback still. I certainly did, but we went with the agreement of several Hearts fans, including staff at the club, so it felt reasonable that they would have a better feeling for that. So there is no Stephen Kingsley on this list, but he would have been quite high up in mine, but he's been classed as a centre-back, so
he'll appear on that list, one. Is that what you're thinking?
Well, he's not going to be as high there as he would be for a fullback. There's more good centre-backs. As we're going to explore here, we were scraping the barrel a bit to broaden things out. I could have put multiple players. I could have put third Rangers and Celtic fullbacks in here. I ultimately decided against it just for a bit of variety, and because I think in both cases the players in question haven't actually played that well this season. Had they done so, I would have picked them, I think, regardless.
I agree with that, because I think I don't just leave out the Old Firm players for the reason of variety. At times, I have put in lots when I think that they are all really up to it. You know, when you get to the wingers and you had the Celtic ones over the years, you need all four of them. But you have to have them in the attacking midfielders because they all perform well. But I think when you've got, I know Borna Barisic is better at quite a lot of things than the vast majority of the players on this list, especially in an attacking sense. But he's not been good for Rangers this season. He's lost his place because poor performance, and the parts of his game that had always been an issue over the years are become more and more prevalent. So I just thought, like, yes, I know he's probably better than some of the guys that I've got in here, but I just don't think he deserves to be on the list now. So
And on a similar note, Anthony Ralston, for me, I didn't put him in. He's in the Scotland squad right now. If Aaron Hickey ends up not making it, he will probably go to Germany in the summer. But he has not. I mean, basically, as many of us predicted, he had that wee kind of purple patch under Postecoglou, and even probably including last season, has not really been up to much. And I didn't really think as much as he would a few teams on this list take them ahead of the players listed. Certainly, the guys down at the bottom probably they would. I didn't think his performances this season have merited inclusion, so I've not included him. And there's a few other guys that we might get onto that are probably a wee bit unlucky to miss out from various clubs. But I don't want to say who's unlucky to miss out for me in case you've included them, Tony.
yeah,
I do think we'll have probably at least 10 players the same in our lists. If it's, I think there's one player that I know will be in yours that's not in mine, but broadly because it's from your club. But I don't think he's very good. But we'll get on to that.
Yeah, I think you might actually not. The one that you're thinking hasn't made it in the end.
Okay,
After but I will talk. Like, is it Lewis Miller you're mentioning?
Yes.
Yeah, I like Lewis Miller, but he's chaos copyright. Like, I mean, he's absolutely wild footballer to watch, both in a positive and a negative sense. But I did have him in here, but I decided to go with someone else in the end.
When you said to me you had two Hibs players in, I was like, oh, I certainly don't, but I knew that must have been him. But anyway, we will save the mucking about, and we'll dive in, and we'll go start with number 12. Tony, who did you pick at number 12 on your list?
I've went for young Motherwell fullback Georgie Gent.
Exactly who I've got at number 12. A late inclusion. It was very much a okay, we'll get him in type of guy. So what was your take?
Oh yeah, I mean, Gent, during the season, during Kettlewell's worst period, I think there was a bit where he didn't seem to fully trust Gent, and I found that really weird at the time, because I thought every time I'd seen him, and according to fans, they were quite impressed with him. It's really obvious that he's a really natural left back or left wing back. He's really fit. He can get him down the pitch, and his main talking point is that delivery that he's got. He can whip it. He can do it on the run, which is always something I really, really like in a fullback, because I think we make assumptions that they all can, but a lot of players cannot on the run whipping a good ball when they're going at full pace. But he's had quite a weird like season at Motherwell, because they punted him out on the right, which totally negates all of his sort of like main attributes. So he's had quite the journey with Stuart Kettlewell, but it's no surprise that once Motherwell are firing, that Gent's definitely the guy that's playing on the left-hand side.
Yeah, and I think you obviously had Max Johnson on the other side last season who was delivering like that, and I think it's been a part of what Kettlewell wants if he's going to play with these fullbacks pushed high up the park. He wants deliveries from them, and he's definitely offered that. And yeah, had they just kind of stuck with him all season long, they might have been in a bit of a different position in terms of where they might be a bit closer to battling for that top six, which I think on the whole they've got enough about them that they could have been had they not gone through that obviously horrendous spell that's been mentioned. So he could be a big player between now and the end of the season, but unfortunately he's probably going to be a big player in leading them through some kind of dead rubbers. He might have a big part to play in the relegation battle, but that's not really. Oh, sorry, I don't mean on Motherwell's behalf. I mean like just screwing over other teams. But yeah, so I like him as a player. I think from you're never sure with these loanees from English, especially English lower league clubs. So it was Blackburn he's there from. You're a bit like, oh, this could be good, this could be bad. But I think that he's one of two. He's certainly on my list, English lower league fullbacks that have been loaned in. The other one's a bit higher up the list for me, but so yeah, that's I think he's a fair choice. And
he's probably he's one of the better attacking fullbacks in the league. I think that is fair, and without getting all boring with Wisecout, he does have a really high sort of attacking actions over a game, and he gets caught out. He falls asleep, as you would expect a 20-year-old fullback to do. And Motherwell have a lot of defensive issues, and it's no and the 20-year-old is going to pay the end because there's no one in that defence that really seems to be able to take any sort of responsibility and help other players around. But what he gives for them in attacking sense is, as I said, for me, it was really strange that it took so long for him to really be trusted.
Especially when it was like McGinn and O'Donnell playing both right-sided players, both experienced players, not youngsters anymore. So yeah, it was slightly odd to me as well. If we move up to number 11 then, Tony, let's see if this agreement continues. Who have you got?
Oh, right, okay. I don't think the agreement... I've been humming and hawing about this one. I'm going to actually, you know what? Nduba. And I know you might not be too happy about that. 11.
That's too low.
Is that too low? Well, I've got like that. There's just a lot of... I find that the top end of the fullbacks really difficult. Like there was quite a lot of them because I quite like other players. But you talk me through Ndubia. Why should he be higher?
No, why don't we leave him a little bit? We'll leave him to when I've got him on the list. But yeah, you're entitled to your opinion even when it's wrong, Tony.
I'm really happy for you to tell it because I know how much you rate him. It's just maybe a player. We all have blind spots over the season.
It's hard with him because I think he's a player that a lot of what he brings to the team is just his like attitude and enthusiasm and energy and all of these things that are like intangibles. Like and Kelly are a much better team every time he plays. He's one of these weird wing backs that like he spends most of his game in field. He doesn't really hit the touchline very often, but that's how McInnes wants to play because everyone's all over the place all the time anyway. And I feel
like he's quite his athleticism's really good as well, and I think Kilmarnock have lots of good defenders, but maybe athleticism's the little thing that's lacking. So I feel like he's really, really important in that role, and he's probably the weird way Motherwell Kilmarnock plays. He's the only nominated fullback, and now obviously I can't say I've seen him that much. I think that's another reason why I missed it. And he's played a couple of games on telly, but he's not been particularly good as well, and I know that's just when he's on a I know that happens. So that I think I'm more than willing to accept that he should be higher. I'll be honest.
No, I'm a big fan. I'm actually quite pleased that I think he's flown under the radar a wee bit in general because he's on loan from Ipswich. Ipswich are obviously fighting out, still battling for promotion to the Premier League. I don't think he has a future at Ipswich. He's 23, I think, and he's been at Ipswich basically for years, but just constantly being loaned out to people. Including to Ayr United about 3 years ago. So he's kind of had all these various loan spells. I think it's time for him to get a permanent move, and I'm almost certain McInnes would be delighted to take him if the opportunity comes up.
Be a sensible place for a player that had to go, a team that seems very settled with a manager that seems settled. The club, Kilmarnock as a whole right now seems really settled, and if you're a young player like that who hasn't really been able to get a home, I think 2 years at least in that would be a smart move.
And the support love him, like they've got the song and it properly rings in your ears when you're at Rugby Park. So yeah, even when he's not playing, they're blasting it out. So
once you've got a song, you need to use it. Yeah, but you can go into more detail about his positives, maybe when we go up. Who did you go for at 11?
So I've got a guy. I don't know if he's going to be on your list or not. I think he's been I wouldn't even call him a bright spark, but he's been fine for Aberdeen. Nicky Devlin.
I've got him one bit higher because again, I think I've just seen more of Aberdeen, and again because of how poor they've been, he's stuck out like a sore thumb at times this season. And I think that's what's the reason that I've sort of went for him slightly higher.
It's damning on Aberdeen, I think, because Nicky Devlin should have been a good signing for Aberdeen, but he should have been a good signing for Aberdeen as a backup guy that played 30 games and was given cover for their actual, top class fullback that they sign, but then they don't sign one. So he's playing right back, he's playing right of a back three, he's having to do all these jobs because all the centre backs he signed are shit. So he's also playing centre back sometimes. And so it feels like, he's continued to do he's essentially continued to turn in Livingston level performances for Aberdeen, but that's stood out as being better than several of the guys round about him. And so I think he's very solid, he's very dependable. There's nothing that people would have said about him on last year's version of this podcast that will have changed in any way. He's just a nice rock solid fullback, and he's a bit of a leader as well, a quiet leader, but he's like one of the guys that I think you would rely on in this battle, assuming that, that they're still very much in a relegation battle as we speak. They'll want to lean on people like that are experienced pros and have the right attitude.
I've always been a really big fan of Nicky Devlin. I was actually disappointed when Hibs didn't go for him. People have probably heard me on here say that I think he's really similar to David Gray and pretty much everything, and his style's so similar because he's not that easy on the eye. Devlin, he can be quite limmy when he's running with the ball, like limbs sort of like just flying everywhere at times, but it does work. And when he gets the ball out his feet, he puts in crosses and he puts them in early and he puts them in with pace. And I think he's one of those fullbacks that strikers would like to play with because you know exactly what kind of cross you're going to be getting. He doesn't vary it too much because he probably doesn't have too much in his locker in terms of finesse. But I think Miovski, for example, he likes to go to the front post. Miovski scores a lot of headers darting across the front post. So Devlin, he'll put that with pace in there. So I think that really works. He's always been very good at defending his back post. He's really, really good in the air. And he's a tough tackler. He's a reliable guy. And Aberdeen are, as you say, like really lucky they got a reliable guy in the back. Like that guy, the signing became smarter the worse the season got because it's exactly what they really lack. They've got loads of tidy players. They've got loads of players that have sort of mishmashed from all over Europe. And some of them I can imagine, without knowing, I get the feeling that maybe it's quite a fractured dressing room at Aberdeen, and going by the way that they've played and what's happened with Warnock, I don't think that's a huge leap at all. But Devlin is just so reliable, and he will always give you a 7 out of 10, and just a player that I'm just really fond of.
Perfect. So that was to see your number 10 then, Tony. And he was my 11. So if I go on to my number 10. I am going to go for the first of two players of this nationality on the list. I am going to go for Heart of Midlothian's Nathaniel Atkinson.
Oh, okay.
I think he could have been a wee bit higher last season, and I think he could have been a wee bit higher at times, but he's kind of not lost his place entirely. I think he was obviously away at the Asia Cup when Lembekiza came in, and then he's not immediately kind of come straight back in. He's been playing bits and pieces here and there. I think he's a good player. I quite like Atkinson. I mean, obviously, he's probably wouldn't have been first choice for Australia necessarily, but for an injury to another player. But he's had quite a lot of caps there. He's played for them at high level, and Hearts are quite a concern. They've obviously got an absolute standout striker that's pulled them miles clear of the rest of the league, but they're just very boringly consistent across the entire rest of the side, and that's been good enough. And so they've got lots of really stellar performers who are just turning it in more or less every week. You don't get a stinker from Hearts very often, and Atkinson, he's a bit like Devlin, but might slightly better in that he's just good at a lot of things. There's not like, you wouldn't say, what is Nathaniel Atkinson brilliant at? And there's maybe not one thing there, but he's a very dependable, very Hearts fullback. Like Telly, think of Robbie Nielsen. He's your archetypal Hearts fullback, and Atkinson's maybe cut off the same sort of block.
Yeah, just Atkinson, I always feel like depends, like every quarter, opinions and performances seem to change.
That's true for every Hearts player.
Yeah, because he's when you say he's consistent, I agree with you, because he's either consistently good for like a 2-3 month, or he goes on a 3 month where it looks like he's not really fancied and he has a few really, really bad games. And it looks like, there's times that I've seen him where it looks like he really can't control the ball. Like, and there's a few that's quite common with someone like Lewis Miller as well. that I was talking about. Maybe it's an Australian thing because they don't really like football. But I didn't have him on my list at all. And to be honest, I don't even think I would have had him 13th. There was another player that I've taken out that I kind of regret, and I'm thinking I might put them back in quickly at some point. But I don't even think Atkinson would be 13th on mine.
I'm curious as to who you've got that I don't, but I think we're probably going to, I mean, the top ones are going to be in broad agreement, but I think I'm worried I'm missing someone, but usually it's not the case. It's just that you rate someone that I don't, and that's fine.
You're stupid.
Yeah. No, but we're allowed to have our own opinions on these players.
Absolutely.
Right, so what about number 9 for you, Tony?
I am going with Hibernian left back Jordan Obita.
Snap, that's who I've got.
Yeah, right. So right in the same place there.
Yeah.
I think next season he'll be higher in the list. I think you can see he's come on a lot in recent months. He's arguably been Hibs' best and most consistent player this season. But for a large part of that season, that doesn't mean a lot. But I rate him really highly. I think he's such a good all-rounder. And then you add the athleticism into it, and he has a very good delivery. And he got in the box against Livingston to score a goal. I don't see there being a major weakness in Jordan Obita's game. It took him a while to get fit at the start of the season. He obviously had the upheaval of losing his manager, but he's held it down, and he's done the thing that no one else has been able to do and oust Lewis Stevenson. I know Lewis Stevenson's old now, but Obita is like he's a really, really, really strong player who I think will be even better next season.
He's quite versatile as well. I like him, and I'd heard of him when he signed for Hibs, and that's a rarity, to be honest, that players come here and you've actually heard of them before they come here. And I thought, like, he obviously announced himself. He could have announced himself in a better fashion with that contribution against Luzern, wasn't it? They 2-1 up, and he just comes, and it's the athleticism that you mentioned there. When you see that goal, it's the way he strides through and the way he takes that on, and a lot of composure about it. And I think a lot of players have got one of those, but to have both is not all that common. And I know there have been times this season where he's maybe not really shown the composure, and there have been, as with the team, a number of poor performances through that dip in the kind of autumn winter time. But Hibs are coming on to a game of late, and he's a big part of that. And I think you can tell, because obviously he got that new contract extension the other week, and you can tell from the reaction that people want to see more of this guy, that they think he's finally. Well, it's funny, they sign the successor, but he's already 30, so they'll already be looking to the successor to him before you know it.
To the future as well, yeah. And it's like when I'm talking about the all rounder, it's things like his first touch is good, the way he receives the ball is good, he can take it on the run. With Melida playing, it's worked really well because Melida naturally comes inside, he wants to get in the box, he's scoring goals. That's become a real key component because Obita has the ability to run that whole line. He can stretch. You can stretch the game. You can't just concentrate on Melida. It gives him a lot more freedom, because if you let Obita go, like, for example, if you have Lewis Stevenson in there with Melida, the issue is that people will let Lewis Stevenson get in the ball in the last third because they know the delivery is not going to be that good. And that's not me criticising Lewis Stevenson. Lewis Stevenson's been a great player for Hibs. But that is something he always lacked. It's something teams done to Hibs, is allow that space so they can concentrate on other areas, and now they can't really do that with Obita, and you can see that's part of the reason that Melida's getting so many goals and he's getting in the box so often, because he doesn't have to hug that touchline at all.
Good. Well, yeah, so that's good that we've got some agreement as well, Tony. We're continuing that way. Let's go up to number 8.
Right. Whoa, I'm gonna go for, you know what, I'm gonna keep it there. I'm gonna go for Yilmaz of Rangers, who I would probably want higher. If he sticks around next season again, I think will be very high. But I think just on balance with another player that I'm going to put above him, just over a longer period of time, essentially.
I've got him on there. He's a wee bit higher up for me. I think he's had a good season, as we've spoken about. But yeah, that's fine. So what do you like and what do you not like about him?
I like Yilmaz. See, when he first came in, he looked really weak. He looked like he could be taken advantage of. And he looked at part times he didn't really fancy it as such. But now I feel like when I watch Rangers, he gets on the ball as much as anyone. He's the constant option. He seems to be quite comfortable coming inside, which is obviously a very modern part of being a fullback. Or if he can get to the byline and he can put crosses in, he seems really versatile in that. He just seems like, again, like a really, really rounded player, and his tackling's improved a lot. I've got my doubts about his aerial ability. Just from the eye test, I've not checked that on Y-Scout yet. So I imagine if I do click on it, that I'll find out that I'm talking absolute nonsense, but as often happens. But I just, obviously, just due to his size, that he could probably be picked on a bit at the back post. But yeah, he looks like a really good player to play with, constantly giving you an option. He handles the ball really well, which is so important when you play for one of the old firm, because you're going to be handling it all the time. So from a poor start to feeling like he's unfancied, I think he's done really well, actually. He could have easily chucked the towel in and walked away. So I'm impressed a bit with his resilience as well as a player, because it must have been really tough all that time after being bought for such big money. Never looked like being fancied, coming from a really different culture than here. So yeah, fair play. I think I'm a really big fan of his.
I like him as well. I'll talk about him a wee bit later on, but I think he's one that I've got quite high hopes for long term, and I think you can see straight. There are some players that you can see straight away. They're just very, very good players, and it doesn't always show on the park necessarily. Like there's like things conspire against them sometimes, and you don't get the consistent performances. But nonetheless, I'll speak a bit more about him when we get to him in my list. But I'll go for number 8 for Ryan Strain of St Mirren. I think he's a wee bit unlucky in the sense that I really like him. I think he's a very, very good fullback, but he's not been playing for months at this point, and so it's hard to put him much higher because we've not really seen much of him of late. And it would be unfair to kind of, because there are players that are knocked down a few pegs on this list, or probably in one player who I think must be someone, because I know you really like him, and he's not on my list, but he will probably be back on the list again soon once he moves to a better club. But these types of players are being pegged down a bit, and I think Strain deserves to be on the list because he's excellent. He's a very good fullback, and he will get a very good move in the summer. But he's not been playing that much. But I think he has impacted St Mirren's performances. I think the guys they've tried to bring in, like Buomono and others that they've tried to bring in his position, haven't quite lived up to it for them. And he's been a big loss for them as well. But I think you said you weren't going to pick him, Tony, on basically the same basis.
But I have, and
You've changed your mind.
Putting him in, I put him higher because I love Ryan Strain. I think he's great. I'll just talk about him now. He's a playmaker. He was St Mirren's like go-to guy, and I like these fullbacks that they sort of like go against what we all think fullbacks have to be in this day and age. And you always think of them, they have to be able to get up and down. And Strain doesn't seem particularly athletic. He's just like a quality player. And I know that he sort of come of age at Scotland. He's had that. Whenever I read that, it was never that considered anything in Australia. It was never really thought of as a big deal. And then he made his way to Israel, I think, where he played previously, and he plucked out from St Mirren, which is really fair play on their scouting.
A good time to make that move as well.
Yeah, get out of there.
He got out in good time.
And just whenever you watch his delivery is lovely. His stance when he crosses is really good. Everything technical is class. And in the rough and tumble of Scottish football and the Scottish Premiership, I just like those players. They stand out a lot because he's always able to find space. He's always got time to put in his cross. And like I said, he seems to get more touches than anyone when he plays somebody. And he's just their go-to guy.
Yeah, no, and I like him, and it's for very much the same reason. He's one of these guys, and I think and Dabo, we spoke about him as well. Like they almost are like central midfielders, and like their contribution to the game. It's like they've got there's clearly lots of positions on the park that these guys could play, and they've found their way to fullback at a time where that's what you expect from a fullback. But there are some players like Nicky Devlin. See if the game had changed and being a traditional fullback was like not anything that people used, I think he would have struggled to make his way in the game with the kind of attributes he's got. But with someone like him, he would have, because of his ability and because of his kind of game intelligence, he would have found a way regardless of what happened. And I think I really like him. And as I say, whether it'll be in Scotland or not, I suspect it sounded like he fancies England, so it may be that's where he goes next year. But if he was staying in Scotland, it would be basically one of the three kind of non Old Firm big clubs. So it would be Hearts, Hibs or Aberdeen. It would have to be for him.
I'd love Ryan Strain. It's really interesting what you're saying about fullbacks in general, because now they always used to be the guy. It was sort of like people would end up there because maybe they were failed in other positions. That was always the joke and always the way it's thought of. But now it feels like you have to be able to do loads of things and become the extra man in whatever position. Because obviously football's all about overloads. That's what they always say. That's what a word you always hear as a buzzword. So the fullback seems to be the guy who creates them. So be that in the middle of the park now, where it's expected, we could dominate the middle of the park, even though you could only play with 2 or 3 in there. He could come in there and you could box a team in and you could have the ball for long periods in there. Or they have to go out and support the winger and either let the winger come inside or go beyond them, or they have to be able to do that as well. So your in-game intelligence now, because you're playing the fullbacks become sort of like a hybrid role between about 3 different things. And so you're saying now you have to be like a really, really intelligent player. So, and I think Strain is right up there. And like the example you just used here, Nicky Devlin, definitely not.
Yeah, it's a balance, and there's room for both of those types of players. But I think a Strain is always going to be a much more valuable option as a result. So number 7 for you, Tony. Who is that?
I've just realised on my list that I'd got rid of someone by mistake. So let's make it Tanser from St Mirren. Is that who you've missed?
I've missed him out because I don't think he's had a good season. I think he started the season well, and then I think he's been. I know a lot of the fans have been kind of questioning his place in the team almost, which seems weird with how well he's been playing or had been playing in previous years. So he was one of the ones that was very much on the periphery of selection for me. I'm pretty sure you're not got him as well now that we've got this far. So Luke Robinson at St Johnstone was another one that I think
definitely not.
he's had a good season, but it would be hard to justify his inclusion with the guys that we have got on the list. And he was kind of one of those round about that kind of situation as well. And Tanser was kind of on the fringes of maybe I could have snuck him in at the bottom, but I thought because I had a St Mirren guy in already, I'll just spread the love around a little bit as well.
Because I still really love Tanser. I think he's really improved over the years, and he's just got such good delivery, and he has variation, and he's crossing. He's really good at picking at the back post. And obviously he was able to play fullback to fullback. He gets in the box, and I think you might be right. These images of players stick in your memory, especially someone like Tanser who's been around for quite so long. So it's just a player I'm really, really fond of, and I still think he has had a good enough season, even if he's had a dip recently. Obviously, St Mirren are still really, really high up in the league, and maybe punching above or punching. I really find St Mirren are really hard to put a finger on where they should be, because they definitely don't have team.
They don't have the 5th biggest budget in the country, though. I think that would be fair.
Yeah, safe to say. So they're punching above their weight, and I still think Tanser has a big part to play with that, and their big striker up front will really enjoy having a player like Tanser there to hit him. So yeah, just a player I like.
Yeah, I mean, I've liked Tanser as well for majority of his time here. He played a big part to me in that cup winning team for St Johnstone and stuff like that. So he's been a pretty big player in his time in Scotland, and yeah, I kind of wanted to include him, to be honest, but I just decided to spread it around a little bit. But yeah, agreed.
A player that I didn't put in, who I really wanted to, who I know you're not going to have in, there's no way you're going to have him in the top half of this, was Jordan McGee at Dundee. And I really want to find a way because his output's been good as well. He's had goals, he's had assists. Tactically, really helps Dundee take over. But this is where the unfairness comes. Tanser I've known for years and I'm fond of, whereas Jordan McGee this season, I'm building up a fondness for Jordan McGee that I never, and an appreciation for him that I possibly didn't have before. So I don't know. Again, all our bias over the years of doing this, it always has an impact when you're doing these lists. But I've really enjoyed Jordan McGee this season.
Yeah, and I think with McGee, I like him I think he's one of these guys that it's taken him a long time to work out what position he can play, and I don't know if he still has or not, to be honest, because he's like, you know what I mean? He's kind of been floating about in lots of different places, and I find him quite a hard one to place as a result of that. So I like him, and I would have kind of happily included him if I knew for sure he actually was a fullback, if that makes sense. Because it's like we could name him in this list, and he could spend the entirety of next season playing centre forward. Like, it feels like that is an entirely reasonable thing to do, but he's had a good season, and Dundee have been doing well, and I think Doherty's got a lot out of players like that have been mixed around, and so I've not got him in either.
In your top six.
I'm in the top six because I think number 7 for me was that, like, Tanser was number 7 for you. Number 7 for me is Corey Ndaba, who already touched on, and he's similar to Strain in that I think he plays to me. He came and he was advertised as being, all the Ipswich fans kept saying was, he's a centre back, he's a left-sided centre back, and everyone keeps playing him at left back. So we're hoping he's going to get a chance at centre back with you. And then I looked at our squad, I'm like, he's not getting a chance at centre back with us. Like, we've got all the centre backs.
Literally the worst team maybe in the UK to send a player like that.
Because I'm talking about this centre backs list. Like you could have a top 12 Killie centre backs list at this point. But he's so he's played left back and he's been very good at it. And he's obviously, there's times he's had to tuck in, there's times he's kind of went into that more midfieldy role. But I just think he's a very well-rounded footballer. He's probably in that McGee category as well. Of that, like, that's why folk are like, this guy's got all the physical attributes. He's composed. He's good on the ball. He's just a very infectious personality as well. We need him in our team, and then it's like, where can he go in? And he's found a place at kind of left back, left wing back, whatever it wants to be. And I've already spoken highly of him. I just pray he'll be at Kilmarnock again next year, and maybe we can get him in permanently, because I think he is a very big player. He's got a very big future ahead of him. He will probably be a championship player down south once somebody takes a chance on him, but it's probably not going to be Ipswich because they've got much bigger fish to fry potentially.
Yeah. Right,
so that brings us to the top 6. There's obviously one player that it'll be Strain. I was going to say there'll be one player that you've got in here that I've not got, but we've got one switcheroo. I would be amazed if it's not these same 6 guys that are in our top 6. So who have you got at number 6?
See, I found this bit tough, but I will go for Cochrane of Heart of Midlothian.
Me too.
Yeah, I find that tough because Cochrane's had a really good season. He's had a really good couple of seasons. The up mark in him from when he signed permanently from his loan deal is been quite astounding, because he was like, kind of like what you were talking about with Atkinson earlier. It was the Yonosaurus with Alex Cochrane, just reliable fullback. And you're always thinking, Hearts, do we not want more than that?
He looked like a centre-back playing full-back at times, I thought. And he did obviously spend time playing centre-back as well at that point. And that's what he looked like. He was like, he's not going to do anything wrong, but you're not getting a lot of excitement out of him.
But then, like, as the last 2 seasons of sort of developed, he's arguably one of their best players. He's able to he goes into centre midfield because he's got enough talent to do that. Again, when we're talking about the best fullbacks, seem to be the ones now that can perform all these little hybrid roles. And now that they're also capable of doing it, when there's injuries, they do just go and slot into other positions, and they bring in other fullbacks there behind them. But they've been able to use Kingsley like that, and Cochrane's allowed them to move Kingsley in field, which they really probably needed to do, because Hearts had the numbers issues with Halkett's injury and not really having a lot of like civic players that they weren't they were definitely not fully on board with. But Cochrane's now, he puts in loads of good deliveries. He can get up to the park. He could go inside. He's probably going to go for, relatively speaking, big money in the summer. Hearts will have to spend money to replace Cochrane. And yeah, like he done the complete opposite. It's normally loan deal, brilliant, sign permanently, feet up, rubbish.
Yeah.
But Cochrane has come on so much, and he's got much bigger. He's stronger.
Yeah.
He looks much more physical in the game. He seemed to learn that from when he goes, which probably gives him the confidence to go more direct into the duels, being more involved, going to midfield, using his pace to get past people, which he arguably didn't have before. So it's a guy that's clearly a fast learner as well.
And I think
developed.
Defensively, he's one of the best on this list. Like, because a lot of players that's are failing, but he's a defense. I've said that like about him being. He looked like a centre back. He's developed a lot more the rest of his game. It was probably always there, but it was maybe just the confidence to bring it out and the understanding of the league and all that. But defensively, he is not going to get beat very often. And for a team like the way this Hearts team sets up, that's really important. And it's their defence has been a big part of why they're where they are. As much as Shankland's goals are there, like they have relied on that defence being really solid, and he's been a massive part of that. I really like him. And it's only because I think the guys I've got ahead of him are really, really good that he's you could easily have gone higher, I think, on the list.
I don't think anyone would argue with it, especially not on this podcast.
No, certainly not. So what about number 5 then for you?
Let me get back in. Well, I think I've got Ryan Strain in there, who we spoke about earlier at length. So, yep, I mean, who have you got?
So number 5 for me, this is a people who shriek and throw their hands up in the air, but it's Owen Beck. I think he's good. I think he's a very good player and will have a good career, but I also think he is tremendously overrated as a player at the same time. So I think both of those things can be true because, for example, being linked with Celtic, do I think he would be the first choice left back at Celtic? No, I don't. I don't think he's as good. I think
you are the chief.
Yes, yeah, no, we'll discover that as the list goes on. But I do think that he is a very good player. He's a very exciting player, and I think that is what has informed most of the views on Owen Beck as a player, is because he's an incredibly exciting player to watch, and he's, especially for a club like Dundee, he's been a breath of fresh air in terms of the type of player Dundee have been used to watching in the Premiership in previous years when they've been up and they've not been very good, to all of a sudden have a guy where you're like, oh, this guy is legitimately one of the best in his position at the club. But people were losing the run of themselves, like genuinely believing that Liverpool were taking him back to be like the backup to Andy Robertson or to be their next fullback. Like no, they've got like Greece's first choice left back. He's not very good. They've got like some of the hottest prospects in European football. A 21-year-old who's done well for 6 months at Dundee is not going to be their solution. He got on the park for 5 minutes and back to Dundee.
Yeah, look at like Conor Bradley, Liverpool.
Yes.
Like he comes in and you can see straight away this guy, and that's what it takes to be. You're going to even just be like in the 18 or whatever at a club like Liverpool in your early 20s. It has to be like that type of impact that you're having.
It's no disgrace to say that a player is not good enough to play for Liverpool. I mean, but I think maybe we saw that first and like up close more than most, in that we had Luke Chambers on loan from Liverpool last season. A much younger player. Chambers was 18 when he was up at Kelly, and he was tremendous in that second half of the season for us. But when he went to Liverpool and he was playing for them in the Europa League a bit, and you're like, he doesn't look like he fits in here. And I think you suddenly see that gap that which does make what Andy Robertson did like all the more amazing. But so Beck, to me, I think has been very good. He's been a big part of what Dundee are doing. He'll be very fondly remembered.
Still in your top 5 as well.
Exactly. I've got him as the 5th best fullback in the league, and then that's despite probably had he not gone away, and if he gone away and came back, and I don't think he's really done it to the same level since he came back either.
Injured as well,
but he's got himself injured. But he was a big exciting player, and he's attack minded, and he gets up and down the park, and he will go and have a good career, and his career will take him past Dundee certainly. But I don't think he's. I'll he is definitely not going to make it at Liverpool. There's no disgrace in that.
We
He's
don't
not a
need to have the
Liverpool
discussion.
player. Nobody in our league is a Liverpool. None of the fullbacks on this list are a Liverpool player
Yeah,
or have
they're not.
any potential to play for Liverpool at any point in their career. So the fact that he got 5 minutes for them in the Premier League is like it's an achievement in itself. But
when they were 5-0 up,
so well, that doesn't matter, does it? You can tell people who played for them.
Absolutely, I've got number 4, and just because he's been like one of the most exciting players to watch.
I feel I've been a wee bit down on him only on the basis of like tempering some of the enthusiasm.
Yeah. Well,
tell me what you like about him. Tell me what you like about him.
I love how all action he is. His aggression when he attacks is brilliant. He seems to be totally let off the leash at Dundee, and it's been a big thing about Tory Docherty in general. But he's been so good for them that they've all the makeup of the team was round him, and he's made other players around him a lot better. So I was saying, like McGee, because Beck's so good, him playing the right wing back, he just shuffles inside, and it allows them to keep balance. So Beck can just go charging into the box to make chances, charging up the left-hand side. He gets almost what feels like, in terms of on the left-hand side, he's got a completely free role. And the way that the makeup of Dundee's team, something I've spoken about at length on other podcasts, but this is the one that brings the star quality. It stops it being tactical and brings a little bit that you need for you to sort of knock the door down and actually be a team that can create and score goals. He scored some great goals. He scored a goal against Hibs in the season, which was a great goal. He scored loads of long dribbles, and it was lazy. But the comparisons to Andy Robertson in terms of style were really fair, and it's swashbuckling, and like you're saying, so exciting. And Tony Docherty, again, loads of credit. I really enjoy. It's just hard to think that Tony Docherty and McInnes were ever together, even though I think that's maybe unfair on McInnes over the years. But Docherty just allowing Beck off the leash from really, really early on, and noticing that what he had, quite a blockbuster player, has been great for everyone. And yeah, he could maybe have more input, and it's really sad that he's got injured, and it was sad that his momentum got broken by going away. I don't think that really went well for anyone at these things, but that's what happened because they needed a backup at that specific point to fill the bench. But yeah, he's just a cracking player, and it's sad that it's almost like he's been too good, so we know that we're not going to get to see him here again next season.
It's what I was saying about Ndaba. It's like he's been suitably like all right, but not amazing, and therefore you're going to, like, he probably will be in Scotland next season, hopefully with us. But do you know what I mean? Whereas, like, yeah, someone like that, he will be at an English Championship club. They'll buy him for like £3 million from Liverpool, and he'll probably do quite well.
And it's just when you're saying it's one of those players that you talk about under the radar players. Every single person in the stadium when you're at a Dundee game notices.
Yes, yeah.
You could take people who only watch football in passing who are going to notice that Beck looks like a cracking player.
The guy who plays the game at a different speed to everyone else is on the ball all the time, and like it seems to constantly pop up everywhere. Like he's just going to be. I think they're obviously Kelly have drawn 3. I was about to say the game Kelly drew 2 each with Dundee, but that's been all the games we've played against each other this season. But the one at Rugby Park, Kelly had just equalised in like the 85th minute or something like that to go 1 each, and Beck somehow was on the right hand side of the box and picked up a ball and hit the bar with like what would have been one of the goals of the season. He's that kind of player. It doesn't matter what happens. He seems to just suddenly appear and do something. And yeah, he's he will have a great career. There's no doubt about that.
And then that responsibility
probably won't be in Scotland.
Yeah, that responsibility that Docherty is given him is going to send him in the confidence that will go through him will be huge from that spell because of that. And now wherever he goes, I don't think he'll miss a beat. I think he'll feel like he belongs when he goes at the English Championship, which might not have been the case before. And that's because, as you said, he's just the responsibility he's had and the ability to just go and do what he sees fit. Must have been class for a guy who's not really been able to break through anywhere else. So, fair play to him. Great fun. Who did you have it for?
So number 4 for me was Yilmaz, who you've mentioned earlier.
Yeah, I totally get it. I had him low just for the sample size stuff. But Yilmaz is class.
So Turkey are going to the Euros. I think he's a player that if he gets the chance, he could turn up and be one of these guys that you're like, like Borna Barisic, despite having majority of the time for the last few years not been that good for Rangers after kind of breaking through. And yet every single time Croatia play at a major tournament, it's like there he is turning up, playing in the semi-final of the World Cup, etc. and you're like, okay, how did this happen? And yeah, he's to me, one of these guys that when you watch him, you're like, you are a player. And I think he started to show it. I think the European games, especially the Benfica game at home, I thought this guy is just clearly doing all the things you want like a European level fullback to do. Defensively, as you said, I think you touched on it earlier, defensively he's not maybe the best yet. I think he could get there, but from an attacking point of view and the kind of the technical aspects of the game, he's got a lot. He's got a lot about him, and I think that will prove to be a whether or not it works out for him at Rangers, because I think it could still not. I think it could very easily be the case that Clement kind of goes, I want my own type of player in the summer, and he gets shipped off to, you know, the bottom half of the Bundesliga or whatever it might be. I think in 5 or 6 years' time, a bit like Jeremy Frimpong will be sitting there going, remember that guy played in Scotland, what on earth was he doing here? You know, that way, that's the type of vibe I get off of him, which I think his performances necessarily haven't justified in terms of what he's actually contributed, but I like him and I watch him as a player. And I know Ewan likes him, and Ewan, for all his many personality flaws, is a very good judge of player.
Yes.
And especially Rangers player. He knows the standard they're used to, and he likes him, and that's good enough for me. Right, so number 3. So we've presumably got the same top 3. I wonder if we're in the same order.
Okay, well, I've got Greg Taylor as number 3.
Me too.
And that's just because I think Johnson's had a better season than him this season. I think Taylor, like a few players, I don't know if I necessarily blame Taylor as such. I don't think he was ever probably going to be able to stick at the level he was. The level he was under Postecoglou was so high that
he was number 1 in this last season, right?
Yeah, and he could have went. You were thinking he played to that standard for 2 seasons. Big clubs would be interested in him again for those other reasons we were talking about fullbacks earlier. But I don't think it was always going to be something that Taylor. I think he was playing above himself, possibly there. But at the same, this season, he's just like Kyogo. I think he's been misused a bit. I think there's been the stubbornness from Rodgers to make changes that didn't need to be changed and wanting to put his impact on it. And it's no surprise in recent weeks that, like the last game, for example, against St Johnstone, it was like old times. Taylor looked really, really big. He was on the ball all the time. He was coming inside all the time, which seemed to be, he'd had his wings clipped in that sense for coming inside under Rodgers, and he was making him stay out wide in a much more traditional sense, which was really taking away the attributes that we'd learned to love and appreciate with Taylor. But he was looking great, and he was getting on the ball a lot in that St John's game. Even if you just watched the highlights, it was enough to see how much he was involved. And also Kyogo was getting to do the things that we know Kyogo's good. So I think there's a realization from Rodgers that he doesn't fucking this up real bad for him, real bad for where he's going in his career. So things are going back, and Taylor looks like he could have a real positive end to the season, which is exciting for the chief of his fan club.
Yeah. So I mean, I've gone on the record many times in how much I just Taylor has done a lot of different. He's played a lot of different ways, because even his time at Kelly, he went from being a kind of boring fullback to being quite an attack-minded fullback to suddenly being really strong defensively, and like he's got better and better and better. He's only 26 now. He feels like he's been around.
Wow, see, I didn't realise that. I thought he was older.
He was young when he broke through, because he made his second appearance for Kelly. So he made his debut in the last game of the season when we were already guaranteed in the playoff. Then his second ever game for Kelly, I think as an 18-year-old, was in the playoff final second leg against Falkirk that we won 4-0. And he's basically not. He wasn't out of the team then. He's basically not been out of any team since then. Maybe a wee brief spell at the start of his time at Celtic, but he's been very consistent. And I think the period around about the end of last year and the start of this year is probably the worst he's played in his career. I think me and Amy did the podcast after the Scotland-Norway game. The Scotland-Norway game at Hampden, and I thought he was atrocious in that game. I think he was unfairly criticised for the goals Scotland conceded because he was actually left hung out to dry by the players playing in front of him for both of those. But every other aspect of his game, it just wasn't happening for him. But I think he's been very lucky. I mean, in itself, with Andy Robertson and Kieran Tierney around, to be getting double figures of caps for Scotland in itself is an impressive achievement. He's been lucky a sense that they've been injured, and he's still got an outside chance of making the Euro squad. Had it been a 26-man squad, I think he would have been a shoe-in. I think his name, because it would have meant, because basically what Clark's got to think about is he's got Andy Robertson there. Robertson and Tierney are clearly both starting in left back and left wing back, and left back and left centre back. And if Aaron Hickey's fit, he is also starting at right wing back. Now those are your three best left backs you've got for Scotland. Right, they're all in the team in different positions. Yeah. So it's always just that question of if Robertson had to go off injured during a game, or even if Robertson wasn't available for a game, do you want to disrupt one of the other parts of your team by either moving Tierney out to play wing back or switching Hickey across? Or do you want a guy that can just slot in? He's obviously not as good, but you don't have to disrupt everything else. And with a 26-man squad, I think, and that's why he went to the last Euros, he was always going to be, you can afford to take Taylor. But I think he will now be thinking, is it the case that I just have to bite the bullet and drop him? And I think he probably will be on the outside looking in. All things considered, I wouldn't be hugely surprised if he went, but I think he's got to look at it and getting another kind of, different type of player in the squad or whatever it may be.
Yeah.
So he may be unlucky.
He's got so many options that can already play the role that are already going.
And he's unlucky in the sense that obviously you've even kind of down the line in the production line, you've got Serie A's Josh Doig, who's not there yet as a player, I think, but he's clearly going to go somewhere, and I think it's going to be hard for him to maintain a career. Whereas if Greg Taylor had been around 10 years ago, he'd probably have 50 Scotland caps by now.
Yeah.
Because just by being a pretty good fullback, like the sort of, I guess, like if you think of who was in the team at that point, it would have been like Stephen Whittaker playing left back and stuff, good players, but there was nobody like kind of standing out. Whereas now he's got like all the left backs up against him. But yeah, so I think he's had a poor season by his standards, but he's still been fine. And I think I think there is a tendency for Celtic fans to not particularly like Scottish players, especially ones that haven't come through their own youth system. I think they're always fighting harder than a flashy foreigner who comes in. You saw that with when they brought Bernabei in. It was like everyone was amazed about him, despite, it was like, oh, of course he's going to take Taylor's place. And funnily enough, no, he was shit. And he's away already.
That was me.
And I think that's always a problem for Celtic fans in general, that they want. I mean, you can understand it. They're best players of the last generation have all been these exciting foreign players, so you can kind of understand it. But you have to also remember every good team is built on the bedrock of consistent guys that will hang around and play lots of games. And so, and that will be him. I don't think he'll be going anywhere. I think he'll be Celtic's first choice for many years.
Talking of like flashy foreigners, unflashy foreigners from Canada.
The most unflashy foreigner in every way that you could get, but an extremely good player. And how did you know who was going to be second on my list? I could have had him.
Could have had him tall. I mean, that especially with your mindset and character.
But no, you're quite right. You're quite right. Alistair Johnston, I believe, is number 2, and every fibre of my being wanted him to be terrible, but sadly he's not.
Yeah,
Billy Mikael Lustig, just a dislikable
character.
I know he's not even done anything overtly dislikable. There's just like a vibe off him that is bad.
He's got he choked. Was he not choking? Was he not fighting with a kid recently? Well, this is one of the young players that's came on for Celtic.
Oh yeah, that's right. Yes,
or maybe for Hearts or maybe Hibs or something. But he's so good in duels, Alistair Johnston. Like, they don't need stats in, like, I can tell you that. He wins so many. He's so strong. He's so fit. He's athletic. He's good in the air. He just does everything. He can just do everything, and he's reliable. But he's such a leader. He takes the game by the scruff of the neck. That not necessarily maybe, I was talking about much like Strain earlier, and is more about the playmaking role, and he gets on the ball all the time. But I feel like Alistair Johnson sort of leads for the front sometimes. The game that I really remember that he done that this season was the second half against Motherwell when they were getting beat and they went on to score 2 late goals to win the game. But he was just getting on the ball constantly. You could see him shouting at teammates. He was pumped. He was winning tackles. He's so aggressive in his style, and he's so reliable. But he's also got a quality drill delivery. He can hang the ball up. He just looks like he wouldn't. He plays like a captain that you would expect, and he looks like a guy that he strikes me one of those players that no matter what level he went to, he would tuck in no problem. He would never be a failure.
Yeah, he's an all rounder. I saw him play for I went to the only MLS game I've ever been to. I went to Montreal on holiday, and when he was still there.
And Ryan Gauld didn't score. Oh bloody hell!
He wasn't playing, so that'd have been difficult. But he didn't stand out in any particular way. I wasn't like, well, this guy's amazing, but I think that kind of sums him up, right? It didn't, as you said, he wasn't one of the ones that when they played in the Champions League, you were like, this guy is miles out of his depth. I mean, he didn't look like he was like, he didn't look like he belonged there or anything, but it was like, he does have a lot about him. I think he's solid. He's good going forward. There is not a weakness in his game, I wouldn't say. Even for a guy that's maybe not the biggest, he doesn't really get beat in the air very often. It's like you said, everything he does, he's pretty competent at, but I think he could add goals to his game, actually. I'm surprised he doesn't have a few more goals, which probably segues in quite nicely to who our first choice is here. And the debate that we can still have on this player, we'll tone it back a little bit, but
yeah,
I think there was no doubt whatsoever that this year it was going to be James Tavernier who was the best fullback in the league. I think he's, particularly given that the other guys haven't lived up to that quality, I think you have to pick him almost by default. But I do think that the goals he scored are not representative of him as a player. I don't think the fact he scored lots of goals when they're almost all from set pieces actually makes any difference to whether he's good or not. I mean, I'm not saying clearly scoring goals is a good thing.
It's the best thing.
It's not representative of his quality as a fullback because it's penalties.
I still think he scored 8 non-penalty goals in the league this season.
That's still a lot. No, don't get me wrong, but it's when people are like, oh, he scored 20 goals this season. It's like, well, yes, but he scored.
I think it works. We've had this discussion off air. I think the penalty goals works for and against him. So it works for him because people like gush over the numbers, which always look outrageous for a fullback. But I think it stops people concentrating on other parts of his game. Like his defensive part of his game's improved no end over the last sort of 2 or 3 years. Like no end. Because, I mean, there was a period where he was a poor defender at Scottish Championship level. Never mind like Europa League level where he went on. And I think a lot of people forget like how many assists he gets. I know some of them are for set pieces, but he's got really good delivery. He's got variation in how he plays out wide. So like even if you take away the penalty goals, his goals and assists for Rangers would be outrageous for a fullback. Like we're in the hundreds. Maybe even more than that. I think it was like maybe what was it? He scored 80 odd penalties. So I still think he was at like 150 goals and assists out with the penalties, which is remarkable. It's like kicking around 20 a season every season for 7 years for Rangers. And obviously the beauty of Tavernier is that he has done it at every level. He's sort of grown with the club.
Yeah.
And has always managed to develop to stick around, but he developed too late to maybe move. It's like these things come up sometimes with players where it just everything works in your favour as a club, and you get them at Hibs and even Kilmarnock. We've all had players that were probably too good for you, but circumstance was it always ended up that they always just seemed to hang around and they became sort of legends of the club. But Tavernier is just a remarkable story.
There is absolutely no doubt. He will be one of the most influential players in that club's history, you would have to say, in terms of, because when he arrived, they were languishing in the Championship for like Kevin spent. It wasn't just like their journey. They'd stopped. They finished third in the Championship like the season before, which is an astonishing thing to think of in itself. And he came in and he scored a lot of goals in that first season, and he's basically never stopped. And yeah, they were, and he's been there when they were a bad, very bad, like by their standards, Premiership club, and then has won the league. He's been to a European final. He's played in the Champions League. Okay, not well. Like, not him
like
personally, but yeah.
Europa League. He was a top scorer in that tournament as well. And there was goals in the box in that one against Dortmund and stuff like that. So he was tremendous.
And he was tremendous in that run. And he's saved many of his best performances in a Rangers trip for Europe, where I think he's had a bit more freedom to play as well. As a footballer, I think he's got everything. He's an all-action player. Like Trent Alexander-Arnold, the criticism he often gets is like he plays fullback like a central midfielder, but in the sense that he doesn't bother defending. And I think Tavernier, that can be levelled at him sometimes, but I think it's more that he just switches off in a lot of positions. I think when he's playing in Europe and he actually knows he has to defend, he does it well. But I think he sacrifices his defensive game a little bit domestically sometimes, where he's like, well, the onus is on me to be a creator. But I think there's a lot of that, like obviously at a much lower level, the same skill set that Alexander-Arnold's got, that it's not even like a central midfielder like we've spoken about, it's like a number 10 that he plays like as a fullback. And I think there's a lot to like about him. It's ridiculous to me that he was getting criticism for, like, you know, not being a leader, because I think as a leader, he's one of the best types of leaders you could hope for, because he leads by action. He's not just a big chest thumping, you know, that maybe that's what some people think the Rangers captain should be, but the best Rangers captains weren't that either. Like Barry Ferguson, for all the type of guy he was, Barry Ferguson led by example as a player. He didn't beat his chest pointlessly.
Just always be available, can always take the ball, take the game by a scruff of it.
These are the things that matter.
When you need him,
he turns up, and it's folk talk about captain's an overrated. It's not. It's like it's overrated if you think it's just about that, but it's about being the guy that when the chips are down, they turn up and they drag you through games. It's like Andy Robertson's done it a number of times for Scotland. Like the game in Norway. Yes, it wasn't him that anything came from, but he was the one setting the tone that the game wasn't over. These guys are crucial, and Tavernier to me should be a kind of hall. If Rangers have a Hall of Fame, which I assume they must, he should be a certain.
It's the most Rangers thing I could possibly think of.
But he should be, he should be in that, and he's, to me, there are not been in my lifetime very many better and bigger Rangers players, despite the fact I think. Not even that he's overrated. I think folk talk about goals and nothing else from Tavernier when it has to be addressed that most of those goals are penalty kicks, and any player scores a penalty sorry, I'm distracted by Finland v Wales here, which is just the Finnish boys made an absolute arse of it for 4-1. Sorry, if Alan McGregor took all the penalties while he was playing for Rangers, it wouldn't make him any better a goalkeeper. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's
but being good at penalties is a skill in itself.
Of course, it's a skill, but it's a skill that's very distinct from the skill that
of the rest of the game
of being a fullback. So.
But again, like I think you looped it around nicely there. What I was saying at the start is I think the goals work for and against him, because people just gush over this one part of his game, which is actually that if you ignore the penalty goals, everything else is still really good, really really good. And then on top of that, he's also the best free kick taker in the country in terms of a direct free kick. And he does them at times when it's needed. Like you were saying, like the equaliser at Parkhead, he scored a few big Old Firm free kicks when Rangers are under the cosh, man. They're not creating a lot, and they really need a goal from something like that. And then at your own ground recently at Rugby Park, that's Rangers were dropping points there, man. They really should have drop points, and that's exactly what you're talking about. Is right, what does a captain do? Well, I'm a captain who can score a free kick, so I'm pinging a 30-yarder when it's no really, like, it's a really really good free kick. It doesn't look likely that you're going to score, and he does it again. So yeah, I think it's really fair. He should be a legend of the club in so many different ways, and yeah, he's undoubtedly the best fullback and has some of the best output that you could possibly ask for a player in your team.
Yes, so we will wrap it up there. I think that's it's always unpleasant when you have to spend time talking positively about Rangers and Celtic players, but that's how we finished off that podcast.
These are the rooms. This is the one where we have to do it.
Yeah, but yeah, I mean, it is what it is, and we'll maybe we can find a position where they're not going to have the number one player. It's maybe this season more than ever. There's a chance of that, but not in this list. That was never going to be the case. But thank you so much for joining me, Tony.
Oh,
and
my pleasure.
It's always a pleasure. I'm looking forward to seeing you having a chat on Saturday when we head to this Stenhousemuir hospitality. And to all the listeners, thank you so much for continuing to support the podcast. As we said, this has been always a staple of the main show. It's been moved over to the Patreon because we know that it's the type of content you guys will appreciate, and that the lower league content is fantastic. There's no doubt in that, and so it makes sense for that to be one of the main shows. But we love putting these types of shows together, and we know that you like listening to them, and hopefully that has continued to be the case. And I'll apologise. We'll both apologise for wronging various players at your clubs who should have clearly been on this list, but
of course.
But for our bias against whichever particular football club you support, I can only apologise for that. But nonetheless, thanks for continuing to support the podcast despite these biases. All right, good to speak to you all, and see you soon.
Cheers.